Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Real Life Monopoly podcast. I'm Jack. You've probably seen me on Facebook, or this might be your first time being introduced. But I'm a real estate investor. I'm an Army officer. I've been in the Army for 6 years, and I've been doing real estate for 2 of those. So let's introduce our guest. This is Birdie. Birdie, say hi.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Birdie, can you tell us a little bit about what your focus in real estate is right now?
Yes. So right now, oh gosh, I'm doing a lot of plates in the air, but this is kind of how I roll, which if you know me, get to know me, you'll know that I'm more of I see through the lens of opportunity, not necessarily laser focused on one thing, which is not what PACE teaches us to do. I am not a good student. I actually am a good student, but in my life, but I'm not.
Yeah, I am not a good student. I went to VMI for college, and it was super good. It was super miserable, and I passed with C's and D's.
I was gonna say VMI is not easy.
Yeah.
I have a nephew that went there, and
cool.
a niece that went there for law school, actually. And anyway, so I think VMI.
The WNL is right next door that has a law school.
Oh yeah, that's it. So anyway, I launched inside of our community something called the Flyby, which is basically me. My background is design. I was an actress for 30 years, and I also had a design company for 11 years in Southern California. And now I've carried it over to Charleston, where we've lived for 4 years. So I fly around to different properties within the community. If someone reaches out and asks for my help, I go and consult on fix and flips. So far, it's just fix and flips. I would do commercial. I would also do buy and holds for whatever asset, like if you're doing short-term rental or something like that. So I fly in, I meet with a contractor, I look at the property, I get a feel for the neighborhood, understand what the pulse of that town is. And then I look at the comps and I try to help the fix and flipper understand why certain things sold at a certain price and why others did not. And then we break that down, and then I leave and I work on boards. So I will submit boards for the different rooms of the house. And if it's not that complicated, it doesn't have to be, but something that might be a bigger, more extensive thing that you're really having to get a picture of what the rooms would be. So I do boards and I'll do revisions, and we look at the budget, and I really try to work with the fix and flippers to understand where to spend the money and where not to spend the money. I think it also brings a lot of value to the lenders in these deals. I think it's really, I think it's really easy to miss things and to have a budgetary item get too large where it doesn't need to be. I think that these are little nuanced things in this fix and flip world. And right now, when everything's really pricey, it matters. And buyers, obviously coming off of this like shock and awe interest rate, which honestly is historically right where it's supposed to be. But it's coming from
this is what rates are supposed to be.
But coming from like the threes for so long, like low interest rates, and it was just like this crazy frenzy. It was like it was like the joy pill of COVID. Right. Everyone was like, we can get a house, we can move, and we can get something fantastic for a super low rate. I think people were just like, it was just the one shining beacon in this like cloudy time in all of our lives. Right. So, it's been, buyers are just they're more discerning now. So they're not just going to walk in.
Which is a good thing.
100%. People aren't just jumping in and going, well, we'll have equity in like 6 months, or 5 months.
Can you imagine starting a flip or a burr at like the end of like the beginning of 2022 when rates were still 3.5? You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to refinance this into a 4% interest rate DSCR, and then 6 months later rates are 7.
Terrible.
Like, I can't imagine having like bought a house with either of those exits, because one, now all your buyers dried up, and then like also you can't refinance because you're not going to make any money. Like there, I imagine there was a lot of people that were in the middle of it. I wasn't in it yet, right? I was still, I thought I was cool. I had bought 2 houses with my VA loan at 2.8%. I was sitting pretty, and I bought my primary residence at like 5.25%, and I was like, this is miserable. And that's kind of when I started learning about real estate, because I felt a little burned by my agent.
Yeah.
But that's when I started learning about real estate. But in hindsight, it's like I can't imagine being like having gotten into it in like 2019, and I had a whole bunch of success and was selling stuff super fast. I thought it was great, and then hitting 2022 like a wall.
Yeah. You know, I think though, if you look back, I mean, obviously hindsight makes it easy, but if you look back, I think that there was, if you had an awareness, I think that everyone knew that it wasn't going to last.
Mm-hmm.
And
it lasted a long time though.
It did. But it did, you know, it was creeping up.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't just all of a sudden go from, you know, 4 to 7. Right. So it was creeping up. It was just like everyone was sort of like, okay, is it going to stop now? Is it going to stop now? Is it going to stop now? And I think that the important thing in this, what you're explaining, is that even in, yes, there was a definite slowdown for sure. But even in the midst of that, there are people that were able to sell their properties.
Yeah.
And there were people that, you know, like you said, we're stuck. We're really stuck. Yeah. And I think that picking the right market to do the flips in is a big thing. And understanding, you know, yes, where your numbers are, and then knowing, you know, here's where I come in. Did I do a good job? Did I make it special? Or did I just go to Home Depot and grab whatever off the deep discount rack?
Right.
And paint and throw something in there and just jump up and down knowing that I was going to make money anyway. You know, because again, if the buyers become savvy and more discerning, and you know that you didn't give it your best, then you're stuck. But that's the one reason I started this whole Flyby program, because number one, I don't need to stand around and babysit a job site, which I've done countless times.
Right.
And was part of my design, you know, contract with the client. So I would work on multi-million-dollar houses. And these typically are people that, you know, you develop those relationships. After I would do one for somebody, they were more trusting and like not having to pop in on the job site all the time. But, you know, their expectations are, when you're spending, you know, $800,000 on a remodel, that's the remodel price because your house is $3 million, or, you know,
right.
Your expectations are going to be high. And so I wanted to offer value to this community so that people who were fairly new to fix and flip, or maybe not new, but maybe going into a different level of a different price point of home, or different type of neighborhood that they've never worked in. I want to encourage the fix and flipper to see like where to spend the money, where not, like, as I said before, but also they have to learn how to run that job. So I'm not sticking around and running, you know, I'm coming back to Charleston, and of course I'm available by phone or text or whatever to help them if they're stuck. But I'm not, you know, I'm not communicating with the contractor or the sub or whatever. That's their job. They have to learn it. They need to get better at it, putting their foot down, having boundaries, all of those things, and knowing with confidence that what they're asking them to do is the right thing to do.
Right.
There's a lot of contractors and builders, as you know, that have done flips themselves or that have worked on a lot of remodels, and there are a lot of them will think that they know what you should do in your house. And some of them are, I would say a very small percentage of them are good at that.
Right.
And probably the majority, like 90% of them, should not be anywhere near deciding what the design elements should be in the house. Right. So that's kind of where I come in. So then I do that, and then I get paid up front a small fee, and then I get paid when the house sells, because I'm willing to stand behind, of course there's things that I can't control. Like if the rates went up again, or we slipped into like a big job loss economy and people were just not buying houses. I can't control those things, but I can stand behind my guidance, which is nice. Yeah. And so I'm bringing value there. And then I'm also working with Ann McNamara on small town revitalization, and really jumping into, by the way, you're in a spot where I would love to. Aiken, South Carolina is, especially after the hurricane just came through.
Yep.
I think it's got pretty messed up there.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have actually been meaning to talk to you, because I know we've talked a lot about like, hey, what do you want to do in Aiken? You want to do something in Aiken? We've been there a couple of times as far as like conversation. And I think like this is because Aiken lost power, like half of Aiken lost power for like a week during Hurricane Helene. And a lot of Augusta, like there's parts of Augusta that still don't have power.
It's crazy.
We're like 2 weeks past it now. So
right.
Like that would be definitely a really cool project to work with you on. So when you mentioned like, hey, this is going to be like really good for the lenders when you're talking about your like the design stuff. Let's talk a little bit about lending.
Yeah.
I know you do a little bit of PML. How many PML deals have you done?
We've done 3, so not a lot.
Okay. So I know how one of those is going.
Yes. Unfortunately, that was our second one.
Okay.
And that was, and I'll tell you how. So we said no a lot right in the beginning of jumping into, the community, and because they were for larger amounts, and you don't know anyone. Yep. And you can like people, but that doesn't mean you know them and you know their business practices. So we said no a lot. I was just nervous. I found out very quickly that I'm actually more risk averse. I'm actually really risk averse, which is interesting given my personality. Not that, well, I guess it's not that interesting. I was never like a crazy kid or a crazy person who was like, I was always very like, I was always very measured with like, this seems like a really good idea. I'm not sure about that idea, so maybe I'm not going to do that. I was very much like that. But as an actress, it's scary to go into a room full of people that you don't know and just put yourself out there. So I guess in my mind, I thought that was me being brave. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But as far as losing money, I'm risk averse. So I said no a lot. Then I came into the deal you were talking about. And it took me a long time to make a decision. And in fact, I got a call from the person who connected me to the deal saying, are you in or are you out? Because I have somebody that's like going to pull the trigger. And then it incited a little bit of FOMO, right? Which was not good. I learned that lesson. And then I had talked to a number of people that had previously lended on the deal with the borrower, and then paid back. So I
think that's one of the most interesting parts about this deal is that like it's objectively speaking, if you know everything about the deal where you're like, you go back and you're like, oh yeah, that was bad, you can go down the list of things that were like, that didn't make sense. Why do we do it this way?
Right.
But people had been paid back. And I think that's part of it is, Pace Morby always says, don't trust your grandma when it comes to money.
Right.
Like you can't trust anybody. Everybody has to sign, right? And so
fine, but
and even if they do sign,
Yeah.
having good paperwork and your own attorney is important too.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing about that deal is that there are people that are in this deal. There's millions of dollars in this deal, like without a doubt. And there's people
How
that
many
had
people do
been
you think? How many investors are in this, do you think?
the group chat that we're in has like 40 people in it. And every
No,
time that I post about it
probably
on,
not all. I mean, that's got to be what? What percentage of people do you think that is? 60%, maybe 70%?
I hope it's that high. Because I mean, every time I go and I throw something on Facebook like, hey, if anybody is in a deal with this borrower and this LLC and hasn't been paid back or whatever, reach out. We have a group chat where we're trying to figure things out. And there's always more people to jump in. I did it 3 months ago. I did it 3 months before that. And I'm just like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
Like every single time, there's more people that come in.
Right.
And
But do you
some
think
people will
do you think those were new eyeballs on you, or do you think that there was continual borrowing happening?
that is the scary part.
Yeah.
I would like to hope that there's no more like capital raising going on for this, but
Right.
it's hard to know.
Because I do see people
I see similar deals.
I see people on going, I've got a this and a that, and I'm like, if it smells anything remotely like applesauce, I'm not going.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like one of the most interesting things about that deal is that there were people that had previously been paid back, which gives the deal a sense of trustworthiness, right? It's like, oh well, the borrower pays people back, and especially if we're inexperienced, we don't know enough to ask like, well, how did that happen, and to go through all the documents and stuff like that. But
to go deeper, just to go deeper, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Agreed.
So, but like, so what are some of the due diligence practices that you've picked up since getting into that deal, since getting into PML? That was my very first deal as a connector, which, like I said, is absolutely miserable to live with every day.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but like we all know, like you learn lessons from these things, right? So our first one, actually, that was actually our third one. We've done 4. I just realized. That was our third one. So the previous 2, well, so here's what we've learned. Loan to own is really a big one now. If I don't want to own it and go visit it or go have somebody manage it for me or, know somebody in the area, then I'm not going to lend on it.
Yeah.
That's it, period. Like that's my very first marker. So that eliminates a ton of deals because I am picky about where I would want to own a house.
Yeah.
And even if it cash flow, I mean, seriously, like even if it's just a killer deal in Huntsville, Alabama, I have family there. And that may be silly for me, but that's just what David and I have decided. Like we don't want to own a house in a lot of places. So it limits us, but also we're okay with that. And so that's one. And then also just understanding, like looking at HUDs, asking for HUDs.
Right.
That's a big one. And it's okay with me if they've only done 2. I just want to see what that structure looked like. And then I think because there are people that are like yourself that are connectors, I would dig in a little bit more into those things. Like how many relationships have you connected? I'd like to talk to some of the people that you've worked with, really having this. And I did do that on this one, as far as like having conversations. I just didn't go deep enough. And so, and I think a big thing is trust my instincts. I think that when you have a high return on anything and it feels exciting and like, is this for real? That should set off a flag.
Yeah.
Like that, at least at the, it's not a transactional loan, right?
Right.
If it's transactional, that's different.
By transactional, you mean like done,
Like a double
money
close.
never leaves escrow.
Yeah,
It's
or
done in
gap
24
loan or
hours
something.
or
Yeah, exactly. If it's any amount of days, 30 days or whatever, then it's not, you got to really look at, if it's that high of a return, what is the real feasibility of that property in that deal being able to hold that much meat on the bone, that if something goes sideways, you would still get paid back that rate. And isn't it better to know? So that's kind of where I come in. I really think that understanding the business practice of lending, also, like, you have to be, when you're asking for really high rates on a return and it's not a transactional loan. I don't know a lot about this, and you probably do, but there's got to be some sort of like usury laws around, right? Like on returns. Is it usury? Is that the right word?
Yeah. Yeah. So in almost every state has it at 18% annualized, which is not what PMLs are getting, which is fine. But you need to, and that's another thing that I've like picked up is like, okay, what are some different ways to kind of get around that, as far as like not to break the law, but to get your PMLs the money that they're deserving for the risk that they're taking on.
Right. Right.
So
I think it's a matter of make the return reasonable so that the deal doesn't fall apart. A. And B, make it legal. And C, if it's ridiculous, as a lender, you need to like ask yourself, is this, too good to be true kind of thing? And unfortunately, not just this deal that we're both in, I'm surprised to hear how many deals have gone very sideways.
Yeah.
I mean, is it wrong to say hundreds? I think hundreds.
I think that's probably like the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any reason that I mean, especially, and we're talking just in like the places like sub 2 and gator communities. So we're not talking about like all over the place, because those are deals like outside the community. I like they go, they go sideways. They don't have, I don't know about them. They don't like really impact me. But I really feel like it was like this year when a lot of deals like that had started, a lot of people came in to the community in like 2023. They went through some trainings. They're like, okay, cool, let's go. The training hadn't really been well developed at that point. They were like, that's fine. We're just going to start YOLOing money on gap deals. And they started seeing other people make some of their money back, and they're like, oh, it works. So I'm gonna just put all my eggs into the PML basket.
But you know what that says? It's like there are borrowers that just have a conscience.
Yeah.
And that are just people that are going to perform.
Yeah.
That don't feel comfortable having someone else's money in their, in
over
their
them.
deal.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are, don't have that measure, right? They don't measure themselves by like, oh, I've got someone. They're just out, it's the Wild West kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the important thing here is to understand I think when you come into this, which there are so many amazing people in our community, amazing people, and everyone's taking imperfect action. So the idea of taking imperfect action is sort of like, okay, I've learned it. Now I'm going to go take action, and I'm going to fall on my face. Unfortunately, in these scenarios, they're falling on their face with other people's money in their pockets.
Yep.
And I think that the intention for, I think probably a good chunk of the borrowers was probably sincere.
What Mel Palmer would call it, a good bad borrower.
In what? Mel Palmer. Yes, exactly.
Good bad borrower.
A good bad borrower. Exactly.
A good person who like, fumbled the ball, but they didn't hurt anybody. Yeah.
Right. And that's, you know, it's lessons for all of us. But I think, yeah, what have you learned? What have been your big takeaways?
So, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how, as a connector, I like could have really prevented getting into that deal. I'm still trying to figure it out, because it's yeah, I didn't know a lot when I got into it, and that was bad. But there's a lot of people in that deal that are a lot smarter than me when it comes to PML stuff, and so I'm still trying to like figure out like, hey, how could I have prevented getting into this deal? Like, either there's certain things that we've done. I always get my lenders on a call with the borrower. I always get references. I always when I'm underwriting, I underwrite at 75% of ARV. Like, if it's higher than that, I just won't connect on it, right? I just won't bring the deal to one of my lenders without like, oh, we're keeping equity in the deal after, or we're keeping
Right.
like something like that. And for me, like, that 75% includes like the lender getting their profit out, right? And for like 75% is like, it's a really important number, because that's like the highest number that I can come in as like a credit sponsor or experienced sponsor, and I can help my borrower refinance my lender out. I'm
Right.
doing exactly this right now. Borrower pretty much finishes renovation in Fort Myers, Florida. He wants to go refinance. They're only going to give him 70% leverage because he doesn't have the HUDs combined with his credit score to actually like refinance at 75%, which is what he needs to get my lender out and also get a little bit of money for like holding costs, right?
How did he obtain the original? So was it like a creative deal? And then he
It,
had
it, it was so it was he wholesaled it to himself, or his friend
a,
wholesaled it to him,
okay.
which is kind of,
So
it's cool how they do
offer,
that, but
but so he did cash offer.
yeah.
And then your PML
Yeah,
is
gap lender. Yep.
gap lender. So that's how he got in.
Hmm. And like, I mean,
He
he
had
has
an
a hard well, he
official,
has a
like,
hard money lender in first position. So
how
he
did
was
he
a
get that without the HUDs and the
because you can pretty much anybody can get a hard money loan at like 85% loan to value. I mean, Kiavi will do 90%,
right?
for a new borrower. So I mean, like, that's one of the things that I've noticed too, is that for PMLs, like, when people say, hey, I have a first position PML deal, it almost raises a red flag to me. It's like, why are you going for private money instead of a hard money? Because it's so easy to find a hard money loan. You know what I mean? Especially
Well,
when they're
I have a question about that. Sorry, I didn't mean
sure.
to cut you off. When you say it's so easy to find a hard money loan, you're saying even because a lot of times they'll charge a lot of interest, so it doesn't kill the deal. Like, you have to be really careful, obviously.
Right. I mean, you need to know your numbers, right? You need to be able to go in and say, okay, this is how much my holding costs are going to be if I hold it for this long, if I hold it for this long, and how do I make money, right? But I mean, 1% monthly is like, that's plannable. You know what I mean? Like, I can plan, okay, if I'm doing 1% monthly, then I'm doing 12% annualized, and like, that's expensive money, but it's interest only, and as long as you can I mean, you can plan for anything in advance, and you can just, if you can include it in your underwriting, you're good to go. But
Right.
for fix and flips, I mean, that's, I don't know anybody that's doing fix and flips all cash, like real cash all the time.
Right.
It's always a hard money lender in first position. Some of them are starting the deal with cash, and they'll refi with a hard money lender to
Yeah.
unlock the capital. Um but I mean, it's so easy to find a hard money lender. I mean, even even if there's hard money lenders that'll do like fix and flip loans based entirely on the property and nothing to do with like your credit score. So I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot, and I mean, that deal
How
didn't go.
finding those people, because it's tricky when if you've got, if you maybe you've got two under your belt, and then all of a sudden you have two fix and flips, and maybe they're not
Mhm.
that far from each other, so you've got the crew, you can do it. Um, if you're doing it through a hard money lender and they're like, well, you've only done 2 and now you have 2, I can't lend on because
Yep.
of your personal credit. There's a lot of hard money. I mean, most of them I think go on they do pull your credit.
Yep.
So
and there are some that don't, and like finding those is great. For me as a borrower, like I mean, as a borrower, as a lender, as a connector, like, 'cause, I've been in all of those spots. We were just talking about a deal in Decatur that I'm closing on next week or 2 weeks from now. That I have a couple of PMLs that I brought on, and I have the whole calculator that plans, like, I'm at 73% combined loan to ARV with their profit built in. And like those are all like best practices. And so, I mean, and going back to like some stuff that I've like started doing as a connector is like, oh, I'm underwriting at 75% because I know I can get my PML out as a connector or as a borrower at 75% of ARV. Assuming best intentions and the renovation actually occurs, the comps that you use to get the deal are going to be good enough to show an appraiser that goes by for a refi. And so, like, being below that 75% loan to ARV is very important for whether you're doing a fix and flip or whether you're lending. You need to underwrite at like I was talking to a bunch of people yesterday on my very first live, and I was like, you want to be at like 73% because you got to include 2 points for like closing costs, so like being at like 73, 75% it's just such an important number for lenders because like I said, like I'm able to, we haven't closed it yet. He started the refi, and then he was like, okay, I need somebody to bring their HUDs to like show experience to get higher leverage. And then it was hurricanes have like delayed the appraisal and everything, but we got the appraisal back. Appraisal came back good. I'm going to get my PML out a month early, so that's still good.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like, for me, it was like, okay, this is something that, one, I'm going to make money on helping with it. Like, I'm going to make money on the refi. I'm charging the borrower like an extra point for it. But also, it's like, this is a tool that connectors and lenders can use to get their borrower to refinance everybody out cleanly. The borrower's still going to be paying those holding costs, and that sucks. Hate to see it, but hate to see a foreclosure more.
Exactly.
So
exactly. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then so are you doing, so you're doing your own projects. You're obviously doing your own fix and flips. And is that the only, do you buy and hold?
I do. I actually have scaled a lot this year. In the first half of the year, I bought 4 properties.
That's
4,
awesome.
3 subject to.
Nice.
That might have been it. I bought 3 subject to in the earlier part of the year, and then I'm about to buy a house cash next week that's rented by a Section 8 tenant. And I mean, so it's gonna be like instant cash flow. And that one,
do you have a market? Do you have a market?
So most of these acquisitions have been in the area around Augusta, Georgia. That's just like where I'm at. I also have some in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm actually closing a 4-plex with Megan Fitzpatrick hopefully next week. I really, really want it to be done next week. I'm tired of this deal. It's a 4-plex that we're hopefully closing sometime next week or the week after, which is really exciting. And then, but yeah, I mean, so most of these are like, my buy box is it's kind of fun. I've seen a lot of people like, yeah, we buy nationwide. We've got deals all over the country. I'm just like, I'm still working a W-2. I have a 2-year-old. I have a 4-month-old. I cannot imagine trying to like set up a midterm rental in Dallas from here. Like right now, at this time in my in a year and a half, call me, right? But now,
again, agreed. And again, it's just about where you are, what your bandwidth is, and then because you're still having to, yes, could you find somebody in Dallas? Probably in 2 minutes.
Right.
We have the best community ever.
Yeah.
And you could easily find somebody to help you, but then you're still managing a person. It's still something that's in your brain that you have to process, just spend time on. And if it's not in your backyard, you know, it's just harder.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of like for me for doing PML deals, because I'll do like really small PML deals every now and then. They pop up and like, hey, you know, I can take this one. Somebody brought me a PMP deal in LJ, Georgia, which is like north of Atlanta, practically Tennessee or something.
Right.
And like they brought me this deal and it's like a 10K entry. I'm just like, you know, I could do a 10K entry, and the numbers on it look fine for what they're offering. But
then when you do that and you don't, so here's my other thing. We talked about, like, I talked about being risk averse.
Right.
Unless I really know what's the, you know, to loan on something that's really rural.
Yeah.
I need to know who's moving in, who's buying it, you know, and are there people actually moving to that place?
Right.
Or, you know, it's sort of, it gets tricky because we obviously, where you live, where I live, where we invest.
Yep.
There's a lot of land and a lot of rural. I mean, it's just, you know, I'm very nervous. I'm just nervous about lending on deals where there's towns that are literally everything is for sale.
Yeah.
I feel like the whole town.
For sure.
That I'm not going to lend on anything there. Unless we get a whole gang of us to go in and revitalize the town, which Aunt McNamara is doing, and I'm doing that with her. And it's just not with.
Hey, Jack, Ann, and Birdie are going to go own LJ, Georgia. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. So, I mean, and I'm all game for that. Like, I love the idea of just injecting these like towns that meet some criteria with some life, because I think it just takes one or two people to go and see the promise of a town, right? And to kind of start to churn up a little life there. But it has to meet certain criteria, which is what Ann's big thing is. Like, she's really got an amazing program of how to revitalize these small towns, and she's got certain markers that she follows, and I think it's genius. But yeah, so that's interesting that you say that. So what does that town have that made you look at the asset?
So I haven't, that's like the deeper part of the underwriting that I haven't done yet. I was like when I'm looking at deals, like the first thing I look at before I decide if it's worth my time is just like, okay, I'll do my napkin underwrite. What's the, you know, purchase price plus renovation divided by ARV. If it doesn't hit like 75%, then it, you know, and really that should be 70% because I got to account for profit for the lender. So like, really, if that's not at like 70-ish%, then it's not even worth my time to continue looking at. For a buy and hold, it's a little different, but I've started approaching all of my PMP deals as like, this is a PML deal where I retain equity after you give me my money back. And that's something important too, because I feel like a lot of people, they'll spend time on YouTube University and they'll see, oh, I can do a deal for zero money down. I just find me a private money partner. And then, you know, they go looking for that. They go on a Facebook page. They see somebody posting a sub 2 deal, kind of nearby them, maybe with like a 50K entry. And they're just like, I'm just going to go find a partner to bring this money to get me into the deal. And a lot of people don't really put much more thought into it other than, okay, so you're sharing equity, cool. What's the cash flow going to be, cool. But like the exit strategy on a PMP deal is extremely important. And actually, so I did this the other day. I did exactly what I just said. I brought a PMP on a sub 2 deal. It was earlier this year. It was like in like May or something. But I brought a PMP on from outside the community. I'm in a different community with him. And I was like, hey, do you want to like buy this sub 2 deal with me? He's like, yeah, you know, I could see that. Let's do it. It's like a single family home. the idea was like hold it for a year and then as like a long-term rental to kind of stabilize, and then furnish the rooms and turn it into a midterm rental. That was the plan.
Okay.
Which I could still do, right? But what I realized, because there was like a pretty expensive repair that had to happen a couple of months ago due to
Right.
like an issue with the HVAC. Well, expensive repairs on long-term rentals take forever to recoup those costs if you only
Right.
have the one, right? And I'm like, okay, I can loan the money from my holding company to the holding LLC that we share, but it's like I still got to pay myself back for that now. And so what I did the other day is I called them. I was like, hey, I want to talk about this house. Um, you're not making any money on this house right now, and it's going to take like a year, right? It cash flows great for a single, like cash flows $500 a month for a single family home with one tenant. That's great. That's super good.
Yeah.
But that's not enough to make a $5,000 repair go away.
Right.
And what I realized, like, I'm doing all the management anyways. You're not making any money as a PMP. Let's convert your equity to debt. I will just own the house. I'm gonna start making like monthly interest payments to you. And I learned my lesson about doing PMP on long-term rentals. Either bringing them on my long-term rental or like bringing them to other people's long-term rental.
Right.
There's just no, unless there's like a debt aspect to it first. And so a couple of deals that I've been working on in the past like 2 weeks. Your deal.
I was just, I was
I was
just
gonna say, let's talk about the deal
is
in Savannah.
debt. Yeah, it's debt initially,
Right.
but then it turns into equity within 2 years.
Right. And it's a lower PML return than most PMLs like gap lenders would get. You know what I mean? And so that I think is the trade-off. It's like, hey, I'm gonna get a gap lender for like a 15% return, like cash on cash return, right? Like cash on the debt, but then also you're gonna retain equity in the property after the fact.
Right.
And
But I
I
think,
think
don't you think that's something you have to look at as like, who is it that you're looking for? It's like a PML or a PMP. PMLs want 12%, right? Cash on cash. So if the deal is going to turn over more than a 12% annual rate,
right.
it's probably good to get a PMP, right? Because if you're doing, oh wait, am I saying that backwards? If you have PMLs want you typically 12% annually, right? So you're paying.
Yeah, like, well, for first position PMLs, like for gap lenders, like, I mean, like we were talking about, it's like we're talking about like usury laws and stuff like that. It's like, I mean,
Yeah.
gap lenders know what they're risking when they go into these deals, right? I've seen in the on Facebook, somebody had posted one time, it was a while ago, I don't know if I've seen it since then, but somebody was like, I tried to collect on a borrower because he was late, and then he countersued me for violating usury laws, and so now I might not even get my principal back.
I saw that. Yes. So, so my deal is a little bit more complex, but because there's.
Well, I think, I was gonna say, I think that makes it more attractive to somebody that's like if you're talking to somebody like, hey, I need you to bring the down payment, some holding costs, some closing costs. You're technically going to be at like 105% loan to as is value, assuming the purchase price is the as is value. And so like there's that aspect. It's like you're inherently in a higher risk position, so you want a higher return. And 15% for like a year usually doesn't cut it for PMLs, right? For that kind of lend. But if you're offering like, hey, 15% like immediate return, but then also, you get the depreciation, you get some of the appreciation, you get some of the cash flow after you've been paid back as a PML. That I think creates a structure that it's easier to get funded, for one thing, but also it's more attractive from a risk perspective, because the lender is like, well, I'm not just a lender on this deal. Now I'm actually a partner. I'm on the LLC.
Right.
And so it kind of eliminates that risk as well.
Well, and I think that's what I I think as a borrower for me in deals, the thing that we're just now starting, because we were just in the non-scalable habit of using our own funds for things, which you can't, you don't have an endless amount of money. So we're really just diving into how to structure our offers for partnership. I think partnership for me seems to make most sense unless it's just a fix and flip or in and out.
Right.
But this deal, this is a definite buy and hold, because we do want to buy and hold. I mean, I love fix and flips. It fills my bucket. It's like where I'm very comfortable. I love standing in a house full of rubble and seeing the vision. That's one of my superpowers. So, but buy and holds is what we want to build our portfolio. So having those partnerships makes sense, because if I see the equity and the 5-year growth in the property, it's a home run for a partner, right? If somebody needs to park the money, and it obviously depends on, it's just about finding the right partner. And I think that's just, somebody that's going to be enjoyable, also to talk to, and not be like biting their nails every 5 minutes.
Yeah, because you're gonna be doing your every couple of weeks. You're gonna have a date. You're gonna be drinking coffee over Zoom, talking about the deal.
Right, and just communication
it's gotta be something
style.
that you
Communication style, and also just for us. We're super solutions oriented. So if something goes, if there's a bump in the road, which there always will be, just knowing like, we're going to fix it and it's fine. And I think a personal guarantee is always comfortable to a partner, like just knowing like, listen, if all goes sideways, we've got these assets, we've got cash in the bank.
Well, that's it. That's another thing though. Like personal guarantees, they sound foolproof. It's like, oh, a personal guarantee. He's personally guaranteeing this loan. She's personally guaranteeing this loan.
Right.
But you just said like, hey, I've got these assets, blah blah blah. I've got this much in the bank, blah blah blah. Having assets, like specific assets attached to personal guarantees when you're a lender is very important. And it's something that like a lot of people don't know, is that like a personal guarantee is exactly what it sounds like. It's that person with their assets guaranteeing the money, right? And if you don't have a specific asset identified, that like you could potentially, like, I think you can record a personal guarantee against like collateral or something.
Sure.
If you don't have any way to know like, hey, what assets does this person have, their personal guarantee is worthless,
Right.
And so, like a lot of states, like even if you have a personal guarantee, if you foreclose on the subject property, you have like a certain number of days to exercise that personal guarantee, and then it's garbage, it's gone.
Right.
And so
it's definitely not a foolproof instrument unless you execute it correctly, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's all just like, it's one of those things that
it sounds good, but you have to know how to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's how I feel about my computer. I've got a really great computer. I don't know how to use it. I'm like, don't touch all the buttons. Don't make me touch any more buttons. Right.
So where are you going next? What's your next?
Oh God!
You have a project that I know we were just talking about this one in Savannah, which is I'm excited to see how that one plays out.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. Only because going back to our risk, the comment about me being risk averse, something that I've talked to a couple of people in the community about this. Something I've learned for a long time is that I have very, very strong instincts about properties. Let's just say, maybe not people. I do have strong instincts about people, but I'm learning to get even more, that's being honed even better. But this particular property in Savannah, if it was you know, if it's too complicated and it's not a grand slam, I'm not interested. I just don't need the stress in my life. I'm not trying to make a name for myself in you know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's kind of exciting to me when I find something that really lights my fire, because then I know, you know, when I can see a clear vision and I know it's going to be a grand slam, then I feel really excited about presenting it to people, right? Because I'm like, this is A plus. And could things still get hard? Yeah, 100%. But when I've done all of my work and I know what it's going to look like, and I know that I have the ability to get someone out easily if it does get difficult or that person needs to get out of the deal, then I'm like, this is win, 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 win all the way across the board. So I'm working on a design project in Savannah also with someone else in the community I'm really excited about. We're about 60% done with it. It's a gorgeous house, about, you know, it's like 1.3 million. It's going to be stunning, and I can't wait for the after pictures and all of that to happen. And so I'm doing that. And as I mentioned before, I'm helping Anne in Palatka, Florida with some different things there, and possibly partnering on a building with her and converting that building into something spectacular.
She brought me that one.
Which one?
Hard. I assume she brought me that one. It was
I think there's multiple buildings.
There probably is. This one's like a storefront. She's gonna like finish the upstairs, add a couple of apartments or something.
It's sold.
That's good. That's awesome.
Not to her.
Oh. Well, good for the seller.
We found out yesterday. She's really, I mean,
she was so excited. I sent it to like my I sent it to some of my like commercial guys, and they're just like, I just can't do anything.
You know what? It sold, and the building next to it sold too. So now we're like putting into high gear, and we have to get these other, you know, because here's the thing that I learned a long time ago in the acting world. Usually if you have an idea about something, there's other people with the same idea floating around. There's at least one other person with a similar idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's the saying of like, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Yep.
So it's just interesting when you know, it's like, here, let me give this example because you'll understand this. You look at a house that's been sitting on the market for 160 days and you're like, you have a conversation with the agent, they're talking to you about the pain points of the seller, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden you're ready to make an offer and they get an offer like the next day. And now you're in a bid, and you're just like, how does that happen? It's been on the market. Now there's 2 offers on the table. All of a sudden there's nothing new under the sun. And if it's just an interesting thing. So it's just like this town, you know, in Florida, all of a sudden, Anne's been there, you know, she's got her building, she's looking at this thing, and all of a sudden there's a group coming in and they're like, oh, we see the magic of this town too. And they just come in, you just feel like they came in out of left field. Well, they feel the same thing about you because they're like, wait a second, this was like a ghost town. Not really a ghost town. It wasn't a ghost town, but like, so, and that, it's not only does it light your fire a little bit, but it makes you realize, oh, I do have really good instincts and good insight, right?
Right.
So look at the pros and the cons of that happening. So I'm excited to work on that with her. And then David and I, part of our real Mount Everest of something that we're very passionate about is we do have a partnership with a 501c3 here that has existed in Charleston for 120 years.
Wow.
And it's an amazing organization. They work with getting homeless men off of the street. It's a higher barrier of entry. So meaning it's not a place that's like giving you a bed to sleep in, a hot shower, and a hot meal. It is way more than that. So these are men that come in off the street and they say, I'm ready. I'm ready for a change. Like I'm committed to making a difference in my life, and I can't keep doing this. So there's an extensive intake process, and there's different levels that they go through. Well, this place that's been around for 120 years, they need beds. They have 50 beds. It's always full. They have a wait list, meaning there's men that come to the door every day and they're like, I'm ready. And they're like, we're full. Please keep coming back. And they tell these guys, keep coming back. Please keep coming back, because we do have these guys that are leveling up in their lives, and they're just making such a difference. So we're excited about partnering with them. They've got 3 levels. They've got 50 beds. They need more beds, and we need a little bit longer of a runway, because as we all know, the world is not getting less expensive. So these guys need maybe a stage 4, right? They need a level 4. And so that's what we're trying to find in Charleston, North Charleston area, is places that we can convert to studios, single resident. And if they have to have a roommate, I suppose that would be okay too. But we're really, really passionate about it. And then they are going to start a women's program, and they've not done it in 120 years, but they're ready. I mean, they clearly have proof of concept, right? So we're really excited about partnering with them. And so we're just trying to find the right properties. It's a small mountain to climb, but it's super.
That's so cool. That's so cool though. That, like, I mean, that's one of the coolest things about real estate investing, I think, is that, like, you see, like, when you're walking a house that you're gonna flip, I mean, you might walk through somebody's worst memories. You walk in, it's a hoarding situation, and there's like, it's a foreclosure, or it was a foreclosure. You don't always know, like, the full story, but, like, you're just kind of walking through someone's, like, worst memories. Which sucks. It hurts a little bit. Like, you're walking through, like, man, this house makes me sad.
Totally.
But then there's, like, the flip side of that is, like, I'm gonna take this house that made me sad, and I'm gonna turn it into something that, like, changes somebody else's life, or I'm gonna turn it into something that's gonna produce good memories for somebody else.
Yes.
Which I think that's one of the coolest things about real estate investing. Birdie, we're pretty much, we've been at it for about an hour.
Okay.
And, like, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How do people get in touch with you?
So thebirdie@icloud.com is my email. Birdie.Nicksic on Facebook. Birdie Nicksic on or that's opposite. Birdie Nicksic on Facebook. Birdie.Nicksic on Instagram. And it's been a pleasure, Jack. This has been
this has been super cool. I'll see you here shortly in just a couple of weeks, and then we'll have a couple of Zoom calls with Emily about that Savannah deal, I'm sure. So we'll talk again soon.
Awesome.
But thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for
if you guys are listening, thanks for listening to the very first episode of this. I'll get a light to shine so that it's not like weird lighting behind me. But don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and see you guys next time.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Birdie.
Yeah, thank you.